The table is prepared for you. Wishing you Godspeed.
Welcome back to the B-side review for Frank Ocean's Blonde, the latest from the musical genius to drop. We're going into the B-side here, starting off with the second half of his track Nights, which splits the album in half, and then moving on to the second half of this fantastic album we just got. So the second half of Nights drops off and becomes almost an entirely new song, as Frank drops into this more of a low-key beat, and he speaks on his past life, including his family's first car, once again cementing Frank as one of music's biggest gearheads. He remembers when New Orleans was bumping before he and his family had to relocate after Katrina, and how he ended up living with a lover for a while he tried to make it out of this place. And he finishes off by repeating the hook once more, but you can actually feel that weight and emotion dripping from his voice, and now it feels more labored for him now since this B-side started.
Dropping, baby, I've been home for my night shit. Yeah. You know I can hear none of that. Spend the night shit. My shit. Wanna see Nirvana, I wanna die. Yeah. Wanna feel it on the cool. You come by, fuck with me at the marsh. If you know them boys wanna see me bump down, see me bump down.
The following nights, we get what amounts to a sort of interlude or guest verse. After Frank and Andre 3000 teamed up for the fantastic Pink Matter on Channel Orange, it was clear that Andre is one of the best artists to team up with Frank, and that has not changed an ounce in Frank's hiatus. This track features Andre having the track all to himself as he raps at a machine gun pace over a classically Outkast-feeling off-kilter piano. Lyrically, Andre still got it and delivers some next-level raps here. Throughout his verse, Andre plays with the meaning of solo, as this is the reprise of Frank's solo track earlier in the album. He starts by running through all the ways he's so low, and then changes it to say one of his few friends at the moment is a solo, Cup that is, and that's also so low he isn't even fazed anymore when he hears that a kid has been shot by the popo. One of the most prevalent themes in this verse is just how disgusted Andre has become with our world, with the state of hip-hop as well as the police shootings and the things that women have to deal with, along with the consumerism that has taken over our society. His next line is exceedingly clever. As he raps, he isn't on a high horse, so he cuts the pony off his polo. How fitting.
No more solo, that no more high horse, it's so hard to wear polo. When I do, I cut the pony off, now there's a hole that once was a logo. How fitting, solo that I can give a fuck about what is trending. Trying to cut down on my spending regardless of winning, instead of pretending and bending over backwards. Over half of the whole had work done.
But it's not long before he's off to the next line, exposing how hypocritical it is that women now add fake pieces to their assets and yet are on the search for real men. But Andre knows that it's not for him to speak on a woman's problem, since he's never been in their position or dealt with what they have to deal with on a regular basis. Now Andre finishes off with his most scathing swing yet, as he says he'd always been under the impression that rappers write their own verses. And now Andre is hearing all these undeserving entertainers on the radio as he wonders whether or not it was even worth it sweating over all these complex verses when it appears that the path to success is paved in more shallow endeavors. And while many see this as a direct shot at Drake, it's bigger than just that. As CeeLo Green expressed in a recent interview, Andre actually wrote that 2 years ago, but the lines were meant for a wider problem with hip-hop than just Drake himself. Once again, Andre delivered an incredible verse on Frank's track and has cemented himself as one of the finest features in Frank's Rolodex. Pretty Sweet is the 11th track and is one of Frank's more chaotic tracks with no real structure or story to it, a lot like his Endless album. And it begins with Frank wildly yelling over a mess of both synths and strings until that drops out, the whole time just speaking vaguely on a number of subjects, from letting somebody down to parents being kind to one another, before a quick-paced, heavily percussion beat takes over, and finally finishing with a choir singing about being pretty sweet. Possibly another reference to Frank's sexuality, this song almost feels purposefully chaotic and strange, almost in protest to the same kind of music culture Andre was speaking out against in the last track. One thing's for sure though, with Frank, you'll never get a clear-cut answer or a mainstream easy-peasy vibe from him. He always strives to push the boundaries of music making and listening as well. Next, we have a skit where French producer Sebastian tells a story to Frank about how his longtime girlfriend broke up with him and accused him of cheating, all because he wouldn't accept her on Facebook. Even though he was in her real life every day, this virtual little thing, as he calls it, came between them and broke them apart, highlighting the problems that have arisen with the prevalence of social media in life today, and how something fake can come between two real people.
I don't want it because I was like in front of her, and she told me like accept me on Facebook. It was virtual, means no sense. So I said, I'm in front of you. I don't need to accept you on Facebook. She started to be crazy. She thought that because I didn't accept her, she thought I was cheating.
Fittingly enough, this breakup skit is followed by Close to You, a cover of a Stevie Wonder cover about a relationship that just ended. Frank laments that he wasn't devastated, but it still hurt that his lover didn't stick around at all for the aftermath. He quickly realizes there's no reason for him to preach to this choir or this atheist, since in this case, Frank preaching God is actually Frank preaching for this ended relationship. Frank also used a Prismer effect to his voice, something developed by Francis and the Lights and commonly used by Chance the Rapper on his latest album.
I run my hands through what's left, but we're getting older, baby. Don't have much longer, baby. Why am I preaching till it's quiet to this atheist?
In the next song, White Ferrari, Frank details a story of himself and a lover and the ride they had for a while, with multiple meanings to riding in this white Ferrari together, whether that be a drug high, an actual ride in this car, since Frank is a well-documented gearhead, or just this relationship as a whole. But in this story, Frank details never telling this person he loved them before letting them out of the car, bringing to mind past stories he's told, such as the first time he expressed love for another man, also while in a car, and similar to the skit that ended Channel Orange right before Golden Girl starts up. Frank wishes he had said something and says he eventually texts a speech of what he had wished he had said and that he'll always love this person.
Left when I forget to speak, so I text the speech, less the speeds, text the speed, yes. Basic takes its toll on me eventually, yes. On me eventually, yes.
The two of them had become familiar, spending each day of the year together, a reference to the Beatles here, there, and everywhere. And even though things didn't work out, Frank will always hold up his part of the deal. And the outro is then performed by Bon Iver and goes over a number of disagreements for these two people that ultimately led to their separation. And even as they try to convince themselves that everything is fine, they're both just trapped inside their own heads and unwilling to admit their situation, even to themselves or each other. Now in the next track, Siegfried, named after a number of famous characters with the same name, from the Norse warrior to possibly the Soul Calibur player, since Frank did have a Soul Calibur track on his Nostalgia Ultra mixtape, to a British war poet, all have similarity to Frank himself, as he uses this track to speak on a past breakup, possibly about Willie Cartier, but after touching on this breakup, it leads him to questioning his entire public persona, especially in regards to how the public views his sexuality. He feels as though he would rather live outside or go to jail than follow what the suburban life tells him to do. He says he's not brave, because revealing that part of his identity and calling him brave immediately focuses on the struggle of being that thing and the negative aspects, rather than acceptance and support. There's also a fascinating portion of the song where the beat drops off to a spoken word poem, where Frank goes into an introspective and tongue-twisting poem on dreams and thoughts that is absolutely marvelous.
Dreaming a thought that could dream about a thought that could think of the dream of the thought that could think of dreaming and getting a glimmer of God. I be dreaming and dreaming a thought that could dream about a thought that could think of dreaming a dream where I cannot.
Godspeed is the next track and begins with a resounding and triumphant declaration of love from Frank. He shares some advice and wishes others Godspeed. And even though he himself has struggled with God and his will in other songs like Bad Religion, it appears he still has some faith in God's works. He reinforces his belief in love, as well as expressing that it will keep them through blindness, deafness, and darkness for all time to the day they die. Love will endure. This track is also the title of the screenplay he wrote in his Boys Don't Cry magazine, which details his youth and brings up how he never cried for a long time in that part of his life and has come to look back on it fondly.
Wishing you Godspeed, glory. There will be mountains you won't move. Still, I'll always be there for you.
And finally, on the last track of Blonde, titled Future of Free, after The Font, which happened to be one of Stanley Kubrick's favorite, a heavy influence on Frank. Much like N/Golden Girl, this track is split in two by a silent interlude, and the first half features Frank with a slightly tweaked voice as he rambles on the past and his rise to success, as well as the haters who want him dead like Selena. He hopes that he won't let the fame ruin him and that maybe he can find a way out of the limelight, like the popular conspiracy of Tupac faking his death in order to do just the same. The second half of the track is an old interview of Frank's younger brother as he responds to a number of topics from superpowers to the best thing in the world to his own interests.
You mustn't get the memo. I don't cut bitches no more, but your bitch my exception. Come get her out of my photo. I only got one photo. Remember when I had that Lexus? No, our friendship don't go back that far. Tyler slept on my sofa, yeah. Niggas go back that far. I ain't smoked all year.
As the track ends, it becomes clear that the album has come to an end, and after so much hype, such a long wait, and such talent behind the scenes, it seemed impossible that Frank could actually live up to the expectations. And yet here we sit with another wildly unique and genre-pushing album that lives up both to the name of Frank Ocean and his last classic, Channel Orange. He continues his evolution in new and innovative ways while staying completely true to himself and continuing to speak on matters of his own identity and love as we have come to love from him. And if nothing else, this album gives us layers upon layers of new symbolism and lines to decipher and hopefully learn from that, and that without even mentioning his incredible ability to shape an entire song with his voice and make you forget at times that there's even a beat in the song. Which is not to say that the production on this album isn't also incredible, focusing mostly on acoustic guitars as well as piano and some electronic tastes that all come together to create this incredible journey that Frank takes us on. The biggest compliment I can give to Blonde is that it is a worthy successor to Channel Orange, and that this isn't the case of a one-album wonder whose discography dramatically falls off after the initial LP, like a 50 Cent or a Kid Cudi, Obi Trice, take your pick. Frank has cemented himself as a legend among R&B and one of the greatest musical forces in our generation. And he's managed to stay true to himself and not lose himself in the fame like Kanye West or B.O.B. The ultimate question that we'll ask, though, is whether or not Blonde is better than Channel Orange. And what an impossible question that is to answer. I've already spoken on the laurels and the place and history of Orange, but much like Blonde, Orange was something that had to be digested over months, and we've only been able to sit with Blonde for maybe 1 month. It won't be a long time until Blonde truly settles into its cultural spot and we all really know what we were given, but for the moment, I can say it's absolutely in the same league, and although for the moment Blonde hasn't caught up with Channel Orange, that's not to say the two aren't racing nose to nose. And besides, not being as good as Channel Orange is true of 85% of the music out there. If you want a rating on this, probably go, 4.3 out of 5, knowing that this grade is in flux and could go either way from this point on. All I can say is I am supremely happy with this album, and we are in the midst of a legendary artist, and fingers crossed there will be more to come from here, but Blonde will have us wrapped up for years to come. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you enjoyed this album as much as I did. Please leave a comment. What did you guys think? How did this stack up to Frank's past works? How did this stack up to this year in music? Please leave a like and subscribe if you want more movie, TV, and music news and reviews from my channel. I'll be back soon with another review for a movie, hopefully soon. There hasn't been anything coming out since freaking early August, but it looks like we're getting into Oscar season. It could get good again. And yeah, you can check out these other videos if you feel like it. If not, there's plenty of other videos on the interweb out there for you. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.